What's going on, everyone? Patrick Beverley. He is the little pit bull that teams hate to play against but love to have on their team. And it is being reported that Patrick Beverley has suitors in the Los Angeles Lakers as well as the Miami Heat. And both teams make a lot of sense for Patrick Beverley. And he, being 34 years old, is likely going to want to go to a better team than a very likely rebuilding Utah Jazz. So it does make a lot of sense. Not just that, but Patrick Beverley is on a $13 million expiring contract. So both of these teams would hugely benefit by taking on a contract like that. And so a trade would make sense from even just a financial standpoint, but a player standpoint as well. Now, one fit I personally think is better than the other, but let's dive into it. And we'll start with the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, Patrick Beverley has quite the history with the Lakers, right? He has just been antagonizing the Lakers for day one, right? And there's a lot of concerns with the Lakers and if they were to acquire Patrick Beverley, right? Primarily him and LeBron, their little, spats over the past, but Patrick Beverley has expressed even last season, while he was part of the Minnesota Timberwolves, said that he would love to play with the Lakers. And if anything didn't work out with the Timberwolves, that would be his number one destination. He would want to go to the Lakers to be able to play with LeBron, pick his brain, kind of be that sponge for LeBron, and just kind of be the guy that can just help do the dirty work for LeBron. He also brought up Russell Westbrook in that same interview and talked about how he would love to play next to, an all-time great point guard in Russell Westbrook. So if the Lakers kept Russell Westbrook, could Patrick Beverley and Russell Westbrook, even though they've had history together, would they be willing to put that aside for the betterment of the team? Again, Patrick Beverley is a guy that, as much as he is a nuisance, if he's on your team, he's great. You love that guy. The guy that'll get in there, get down and dirty, will do the grit and the grind, do everything that's asked from him, would provide shooting, all of those things. Plus, his contract would be hugely beneficial to the Lakers because they're trying to clear as much cap space on their books for next season because they'd have, like $100+ million. So the problem would be acquiring Patrick Beverley because he's $13 million, right? So right off the bat, you probably are swapping THT for Patrick Beverley. And even if Patrick Beverley buys in, even if Westbrook and, LeBron want him, even if you end up trading for Kyrie and Kyrie does end up happening and you get Patrick Beverley, right? Regardless, the thing comes down to, would THT, who is a 21 years old up-and-coming guy, a guy who is younger than some of the people drafted in this year's draft, who has shown potential, would you be willing to trade him for a 34-year-old veteran in Patrick Beverley? I understand, the Lakers want to win now, but does Patrick Beverley move the needle enough to justify trading a young talent like THT? Personally, I don't think so. Personally, I think you keep THT. Not just that, but you're very likely to get a better package for THT than just Patrick Beverley. And that all but probably takes you out of like a Buddy Hield trade or, a Miles Turner trade, whether they can get that or not. It's very likely that removes you entirely from something like that. But if this is kind of like push in case of emergency, like this is plan C or D, then, maybe it's justifiable because you need a guy that can shoot the outside shot. He would be a perfect complement point guard to LeBron James, right? If you end up getting rid of Westbrook or it doesn't work out Westbrook or whatever you end up doing with Westbrook, keeping Westbrook, well, Patrick Beverley would be great in the slot. When LeBron is on the court, he is the perfect prototypical point guard, can play defense, can shoot the outside shot, can play off the ball. He doesn't need the ball in his hands, all of those things. You can count on him to be gritty and grind for your team. But I don't know if that justifies trading THT. And I'm not saying THT is some superstar or anything like that, but he's 21 years old and has a lot of potential. And it's somebody you don't want to just give up for the sake of giving up. Now, if it's something to where you're getting, say, Patrick Beverley and maybe like a first-round pick, because you have the justification, right? You're like, hey, we have a young 21-year-old that has a ton of potential. You're a rebuilding team, and he would be perfect for that. He could develop under your banner, under your organization. You have him for the long haul. He has a player option next year that he's probably going to opt into. You can extend him, and now you got a piece for the future that is at least a proven commodity. We're taking on a 34-year-old player who is just, he's just a role player. He has no growth. We know what Patrick Beverley is. He's a role player. He's not going to all of a sudden turn into Michael Jordan, so we need something more beyond Patrick Beverley. Now, if maybe you could get a first-round pick in that conversation, And now you have that other pick that maybe you could kind of, send to the Brooklyn Nets in a Kyrie trade. And it's kind of like, well, we have to give up THT, but maybe the Nets don't value THT, but they want those draft picks. Well, now you can send one of your first and another draft pick from the Utah Jazz, and you end up getting Patrick Beverley, and you end up getting, Kyrie Irving and let's say a Joe Harris or something like that. If it leads to you getting Kyrie, then maybe I would explore it, because there's a lot of talk about the trade for Kyrie. And if the talks are legit, well, then it's very likely THT is on his way to Brooklyn. If that's the case, depending on how things shape up. So you might lose THT in the Kyrie deal regardless. But if the Nets value a first round pick rather than THT, then maybe it would make more sense to go get that first. Take Patrick Beverley, you got that guy. And now you also got, you got a guy in Kyrie Irving. Maybe you get Joe Harris, like I said, something along those lines. And then maybe you could still, possibly because you still have that other first round pick, maybe you can kind of work something out to get a Buddy Hield, maybe a pick swap, first round, second round pick, Winning Gabriel and, Kendrick Nunn, something like that for a Buddy Hield. I don't know. It's just an exploratory idea. But I don't know if Westbrook would want that. You're already, if you end up keeping Westbrook, you're already going to have a pissed off Westbrook, right? A guy that knows that you want to trade me, that I don't work here, I don't really want to be here, none of those things. And now you're going to get a guy that I have a history with that I just don't like and has just always been a problem. But in the same breath, maybe Russell Westbrook is like, hey, I don't like him, but if he helps us win, then yeah, sure. And he could kind of be that backup. The problem is, though, is that it's a lot of things that would have to happen. You're giving up a young player. You already have a ton of guards. Do you really need another guard unless you're still sending out Westbrook in a separate trade? Like, let's say you can't get Kyrie Irving, but you're planning on trading Westbrook, right? And let's say you can get a first from the Utah Jazz. So now you're getting Patrick Beverley plus a first. So now you have 3 first-round picks and Russell Westbrook and maybe a Kendrick Nunn, and you sort of package that together. Maybe the Indiana Pacers would trade a Miles Turner and a Buddy Hield for 3 firsts, maybe a second or a pick swap, and be willing to take on Westbrook's contract, because you're getting 3 first-round picks in the deal. And then you try to sign Kyrie Irving in the offseason, and now you got Patrick Beverley, you got Buddy Hield, and you got Miles Turner. That would make a lot more sense, because, again, if that were the case, then LeBron's going to be your point guard. He's going to be the primary ball handler, and Patrick Beverley would be perfect next to LeBron James as that, point guard, but not really the point guard. LeBron's handling the point guard duties, but he's the spot up shooter, the defender, the grit and grind type of guy. I just think that in that case, it would make a lot of sense for the Lakers. And I think in that case, that's something you should do, because then you'd end up with Patrick Beverley, Buddy Hield, and Miles Turner. And so that is at least a really competitive team. I don't know if that makes you a contender to the level of Kyrie, but I think the conversation is at least still a conversation. I think it's still something to be discussed, especially if they can all kind of play together and work out. But moving on, Miami Heat. Now, Miami Heat's the team that I said that I think would be the best fit, because Patrick Beverley fits the Miami sort of standard, right? That grit and grind, there's no quit. You just pester, swarming defense, like all that stuff. Patrick Beverley, I think, would be one of the best fits for the Miami Heat. Now, I don't think he's going to turn the tides for the Heat in the sense of he's a guy that's going to all of a sudden make Miami more of a contender or as a lock, but he is a guy that would be great, especially after losing a guy like PJ Tucker. Now, PJ Tucker, he can play more positions, he's bigger, stuff like that, but the idea of that grit and grind defender, guy who can knock down the outside shot, all of those things, I think would be hugely beneficial for Miami, but also for Patrick Beverley. When I think of Patrick Beverley, I think of Miami. That guy that is all in, bought in, will lay it all on the line, will give up everything for your team. And he is about as good of a team guy as it gets. Again, a guy that's a pest, but when he's on your team, you love this guy. And I could see him and Jimmy Butler getting along great, because he's a guy that would do all the dirty work for Jimmy Butler. He's a guy that would, do what is necessary and what is best for the team night in and night out. I think he would be a perfect fit for the Miami Heat. The problem is getting there in a trade, because Miami doesn't have a ton of pieces that Utah would likely want. And even those pieces that Utah would likely want, they don't have the contracts to match. And I don't think Utah's going to want a Kyle Lowry or a Duncan Robinson because they're rebuilding, right? Even if they keep Donovan Mitchell, do they really want those long-term contracts? I don't think so. I don't think that they would want to go there. I mean, we already saw a Duncan Robinson-esque player in Joe Ingles on the Utah Jazz, and it didn't work. Joe Ingles was great, but it just wasn't the greatest in the world. And Duncan Robinson doesn't offer a lot outside of shooting. So, maybe you package something around Gabe Vincent, but again, he's only making $1.8 million roughly, something like that per year, and you need to make up $13 million. So I don't know how Miami would get to that trade without having to give up assets. And now at that point, you're likely giving up draft picks. And do you really want to give up draft picks to go get a guy in Patrick Beverley? Yeah, I think he would be a great fit for Miami, but he's not a guy that I think is worth giving up picks for. Because that's what you would have to do. Because what would end up happening is Utah would end up having to take on a bad contract. And now they're not just going to do that out of the kindness of their heart. So you're going to have to compensate them for that. So maybe you do something where it's like a Vincent and a Duncan Robinson. Let's say you do Vincent and Duncan Robinson and you get a Patrick Beverley and maybe some other throw-in player to make salaries match. Because at that point, Miami would be giving up more. Although Utah could take both of them with the salary that they have now. So maybe you do something like that where the Utah Jazz get Duncan Robinson and maybe Vincent, or maybe you get Strus, something along those lines. And then Miami's giving up a first-round pick. In that case, maybe you do it. And I know some Miami fans would say, no way. Duncan Robinson and, Vincent, that's a steal for them. But the problem is Duncan Robinson doesn't have much trade value anymore. He's on a bad contract. He doesn't do anything outside of shooting. He's a liability on defense. And as great as many of Miami fans, because I made videos on Miami in the past, and a lot of Miami fans think Duncan Robinson is Ray Allen reincarnated. The problem is, if he's so great, why did he completely fall out of the Miami Heat's rotation? I mean, they weren't even playing him for large stretches of the season and the playoffs because he was such a liability. And when his shot's not falling, he's irrelevant. When his shot's not falling, he's a liability out there. Now, if he can get back into that bubble Duncan Robinson, where that dude was just lights out, shooting 45% from three. I mean, I'm not saying he has to shoot 45%, but if he can get back to a 37 to 40% three-point shooter, then yeah, it would be a steal for Utah. But Utah's a rebuilding team. They want assets. They want things to recoup. They're not just going to give Patrick Beverley away for the sake of giving Patrick Beverley. And Miami has to match salaries. So how do you get there? And is Duncan Robinson and Vincent going to be enough? I think the Lakers, if you got THT, that is a much better deal. Because THT, you get a 21-year-old part of a rebuild. And on top of that, you have him for 1 year. If it doesn't work out, then, he opts into his player option. You ride with him for that year. If it doesn't work out, good. Then you can just let him go, or you can trade him that year or whatever. If he's great, he's going to opt into that player option, and then you just re-sign him. And it's a win-win. Right? And then the Lakers get Patrick Beverley. I just think that Miami, they don't have a lot to trade. And do they really want to go and get I wouldn't even call Patrick Beverley a mid-tier guy. I think for Miami, he would be a mid-tier guy just because given what Miami is as an organization and what he brings. But I think ultimately, it's not somebody that I would be willing to trade picks for. And that's the only way I really see Miami ending up with Patrick Beverley, unless they just really value Duncan Robinson. But Duncan Robinson, yeah, he's younger than Beverley, but he's not 22 where it's he has a ton of upside, things like that. I don't know. It will be definitely interesting. But those are my thoughts and opinions. And so, as always, I pass the question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. What do you think of Patrick Beverley? Where do you think he ends up? Do you think he goes to the Lakers? Do you think he goes to the Heat? Do you think he goes to another team? Beyond that, which team do you think he's the best fit in? I do think he's a great fit for both teams. I just think the type of player Patrick Beverley fits Miami more than anything. But again, I'd love to hear your opinion. Let me know down in the comment section below. One last little shameless plug is I did start As It Stands Lakers. It is a channel just like this. dedicated to only the Lakers, because the Lakers are my favorite team. And on this channel, as it stands, I talk about all teams, all sports, stuff like that. We have football season coming up, so I'm definitely looking forward to that as well. And I just wanted to make a dedicated channel to the Lakers to give the ins and outs. Now, all the big stuff, all the big news and stuff, I will still post here on this channel. But if you want all the ins and outs and just rumors and theories and just discussions just strictly on the Lakers, link down in the description or in the comment section. Go check out the channel, subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. That being said, hit that like button. Helps me out a lot, lets me know you enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, followed by the bell notification. Stay up to date with all things sports. Join this wonderful community and all of our discussions. I'll see you all in the next one. Thank you.